Welcome to BrandBusters with your hosts, James Schwinn and Sean Lee. Together, we bust open the latest in CPG, retail media, and life, or whatever the we want. And for today's episode, we got something special cooked up for ya. Extra spicy. Take it away, Sean.
Awesome. We are back at you after a little couple week hiatus. James was at a wedding last week, so we delayed to this week, and all good things. Today, we've got some great things coming at you. I know in the past, we talked about Target's store brand that they were launching. Well, not to be outdone, it looks like Walmart is launching a new food brand as well. We're going to talk about the new pause screen ads that streamers are launching that I think could be really interesting real estate for brands seeking an additional billboard for awareness. And then some hot off the presses news about sales in the beauty category in quarter one and what's been going on there. And finally, we're going to brand bust one of the most obscure and coolest and truck stop brands out there. It is Buc-ee's.
Represent. Wearing a Buc-ee's hat for those of you that are tuning in and not watching. So in full Buc-ee's attire here.
So we're going to get into how a gas station became a destination and turned itself from just a place where you pump gas and get in and out, or where people go for truck stops, to really something cool where people travel for miles to see it. And I think it comes down to customer service. So we'll talk about that later, but getting into it, Target was launching some new kind of value and mid-tier store brands because everyone's trying to figure out how do you get consumers back in the store. The consumer seems to be tapped out, which we'll talk about in the beauty sales numbers. So Walmart's launched a new food brand. James, what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so 3 months on the heels of Target announcing Dealworthy, Walmart launches its first private label brand, not ever, because they do some sizable private label business, but in 20 years, Better Goods. So this is more geared at your Gen Z consumer, and also as higher earners are shifting retailers and spend, while also still trying to prioritize quality and kind of better for you ingredients. Their offerings will be unique to Walmart, include 300 items across frozen dairy snacks, beverages, pasta, soups, coffee, and chocolate, all between $2 to $15, with about 70% of the products being $5 or less. So I think, again, with private label and with Walmart's economies of scale, I think maybe these price points, I don't know they're going to be frothy margin, but I think they definitely have the scale to do this. Sean, a couple other things that are interesting. They're really trying to put three themes or undercurrents behind these products. One, culinary experience. So is it like heightened, unique flavor profile? So not just something bland. When you hear private label, you think generic, you don't think elevated. Yeah. So how can we appeal to the customer that way? Is it plant-based? Kind of trying to dovetail on that better for you concept. And then made without, also kind of following. So I think it's an interesting concept as you see a lot of packaging and brands saying, like, emphasizing the ingredients that are, or maybe the macros, like X amount of protein or fiber. Now we're seeing a lot more brands make the shift to saying what is not featured or not included. But just as an aside, I know you came from P&G, which had its plethora of billion-dollar brands. Walmart actually has $14 billion brands, 8 of which are in food. So do you think, Sean, is this going to be Walmart's next billion-dollar brand, or what's your take?
Probably. I mean, Walmart's the largest grocer in America by a long shot. I mean, their grocery business alone is larger than Kroger. At least the last time I looked at it. I think it's kind of a slam dunk. Especially at those price points, I don't think it deters the existing Walmart shopper. And then when you elevate with design, I mean, I saw the packaging and it looks like something that would be sold in Target. I'm not entirely sure, but I think there were some ex-Target people that were involved in the launch of this brand. So that would make sense is, hey, let's just go apply what worked at Target to Walmart. But I think it's a great idea because I think there's a gap between consumers that will buy, you know, in the food space, like let's call it an RX bar or maybe like a fancy oatmeal or granola, versus somebody who's going to buy great value. Like the people that are buying that probably don't want the same ingredients that are in the great value brand, and maybe a little bit more conscious of having the great value packaging in their house. I think finding something with really good design-led packaging that appeals to Gen Z and millennials with the kind of better for you, no ingredients is probably going to be a good combo for them. Even if it doesn't take off, the sheer fact that Walmart controls so much of the grocery market, like this thing is easily a $250 million brand, probably within a year or two. You'd have to imagine,
Yeah.
just based on the shelf space that they can give it and the end caps and the free promotion that they can give it. Um, and I think people like high end design, and Walmart's not known for it, so I think it's a good move for them. Which is a bit non-traditional. I mean, Walmart's been bringing in D2C brands that are more premium and higher end. Elevating your store brand, I think, could appeal to a different type of shopper that's never going to consider the great value brand.
Yeah, and I think Sean, having been part of a lot of conversations around brand launches with you, I think the hardest thing is driving trial and acquisition, and I think they solve for that with, like you said, the beautiful packaging. I think the aesthetic is great, but also that flavor profile. I think people cling to novelty, even if it sounds like it might not be the most ideal flavor. Like that's going to force me. I will try you once, and if I have a great experience with that, then I will come back. I'll be a repeat purchaser. And I'll try other things in your assortment as a result. So if you can win me over in that first interaction, then I'll be back again.
Yeah, and I think with Walmart, it's about price point too. And like when you said 70% of all the products will be under $5, huge win for the Walmart shopper. It's, hey, elevate your packaging, feel better about your choice, and it's under $5. It feels like a win-win-win combo, and it'll come down to how well they execute. But my guess is this becomes a multi-million-dollar brand or multi-hundred-million-dollar brand within the next year, and could be on its way to $1 billion.
Absolutely.
But interesting enough, as we're talking about launching new brands and advertising, there's some new data out that a lot of the major streamers, Hulu, Disney, Max, Peacock, have started to incorporate pause screen ads into their streaming service, which I think is a brilliant move. I mean, with 3 kids, the amount of times that we press pause for a kid to get a snack, to go to the bathroom, or they just have ADD and they go run and do something else. My TV's like on pause 90% of the time when it's not being watched. So as opposed to just scrolling through a screensaver or additional movies, I think it's a great idea to transport or transform a billboard into the consumer's house, into their living room, into real estate that, for a lot of consumers is always on. So I think this will be really interesting to follow. It's probably going to be harder for D2C brands or upstart brands to be able to buy this kind of advertising and see a measurable return. But I think for brands like, Nike, Tide, things that are widely distributed, this is fantastic awareness and relevance to be in home. It'll be interesting to see what the pricing of this is. I've never personally bought one and what the kind of impressions and returns are. But I think the data that I read in this article is 50% of consumers that were polled that had seen this had purchased a product off of seeing these pause advertisements, which is pretty good that they can recall them and then recall that they purchased a product off of them. But for me, I mean, our TV's right near our living room and our kitchen. If there was just a billboard of ads running nonstop, I mean, my kids would see it all the time. I would see it. My wife would see it. If the TV's not running, it's probably stuck on some sort of screensaver or pause screen on Netflix or Disney with my kids.
Yeah, and I think also having 2 kids, similar scenario here, and I think this is a big gamification play potentially. I don't know how many brands can pull out, but I envision this idea of I think what we're most guilty of, Sean, in terms of our viewing habits, especially in the fall, like football Sundays, like the TV is just kind of on Sundays.
For sure.
So if there's not like engagement in a little while, like my device is connected, am I getting some like ad or prompt because I opted into my phone? Is there some type of comical play like, hey, are you still there? If you are, like, take advantage of this expiring deal of like 20% off. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of like iteration and ways to kind of gamify this. So I think, the retail media space, especially with connected TV, it's going to be very fascinating to see play out over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, because I mean, if you can imagine Amazon doing it, right? They know that you abandoned something in your cart or that you were looking at a product page. Now all of a sudden it's on your pause ad and there's a QR code to go open the app and clip a coupon. Like, why wouldn't you do it? Like, it's becoming pretty easy and pretty frictionless these days.
Well, and think about like the call to actions as well, right? A lot of them, most brands obviously wanting, faster attribution or faster conversion. They can push the sale or the promo, but I think there's gonna be other brands. I mean, you see this all the time. You can choose your ad experience. You have 1 of 3 pass based on the catalog or assortment. I just saw this with like I'm watching Shogun right now on Hulu. And I think Malibu Rum is the one that's featuring. I can pick whichever one I want. maybe it's a call to action just to get certain information. So that attribution conversion window might not happen now, but now I'm being retargeted via these other channels, and because I'm now in their funnel. So I think funnels are going to get bigger. Top of funnels going to get even bigger than it already is. It's going to be more attributable than it has been historically. I think exec teams are going to be a little bit more patient on the horizon, but know that this is a win for them, and that they can get more consumers in and nurture in different ways to prop that conversion ultimately over time.
I mean, I also like to view like how disruptive and annoying are ads for the consumer. And, you know, when you're watching your favorite TV show on Netflix or Amazon and you get hit with a 30-second ad, like it's annoying, it's disruptive, you want it to be over. So there's a little bit of negativity associated with it. This is completely not disruptive at all. It's like a great just background billboard. I mean, it's truly like a billboard on the highway, just being in your living room when you press pause, which I think it's a fantastic ad product. I'm excited to see what brands do and how they execute to bring their creative to life in this medium. Well, with that, a category that might need more advertising or might be cutting advertising, we'll see, is the beauty category. So for context, James, the beauty category has grown at double digits for the past 2 years, but it's finally showing some signs of cooling down in Q1. So it only grew in single digits in Q1 of this year. And the trends are really fascinating because they merge or mirror the divergence that's going on in the broader economy. So I was at a breakfast with the CEO of Fifth Third Bank, which is a regional bank in Ohio and in kind of the Midwest. And he was talking about his outlook on the economy. And he said something that was really striking that I think holds true to this data, which is consumers with higher incomes who own assets. So they own their own home, they have a stock portfolio, maybe they own some real estate, they own a business, are doing well in this economy, even with all the inflation. That's why in this data, the prestige beauty category or the higher end beauty category was up 9% in Q1, whereas lower or middle income consumers that aren't really asset owning are struggling a lot more, right? Because your assets haven't been appreciating to kind of offset some of that inflation. So a lot have been trading down. Inflation's really taking a toll. And I think that's where you're seeing mass beauty was really only up 2% in Q1. So slowed down pretty massively over the past couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see how long the higher end consumer can continue to carry the day with these prestige brands and higher priced products. But it looks like there's starting to be a slowdown in the mass beauty category, which interestingly enough in the data, skincare and fragrance were doing really well. But traditional makeup was where the softest performance was. So on the prestige side, it was only up 5%, while mass makeup, so Walmart, Target, CVS, was down 5%. So it was the only subcategory that was actually down, which is just kind of interesting data to see. But skincare, fragrance, everything else was still chugging along, but certainly slowed down from where it's been. So I don't know, James, do you think this is a sign that from all the data points we're seeing with less savings and higher money on credit cards, like that the consumer is finally starting to get tapped out and we're seeing that play out in the broader market?
I think some of it is financial or market driven, but I think there's maybe still a lingering ripple effect with code, especially if you think about makeup, right? The shift to more remote work and hybrid work. I know there is a little bit of a push to be return to office, but for our organization or the organization I'm part of is fully remote. Is the need for makeup as important if you're not going in the office 5 days a week, maybe not going out as often? Gen Z, we're seeing the trend of like not drinking as much and not more non-alcoholic beverages. So I think the going out and social recreational behaviors and activities of Gen Z is maybe a little bit more, via gaming or other things that are more virtual versus in person as well. So I think there's a few other trends that are happening at play here that's probably driving this. The interesting thing, Sean, when we were at the Amazon agency together, is I think premium beauty on Amazon, right? I think it was a little bit in its infancy, 2019, 2020. Higher end consumers might just want to reserve those purchases for Sephora, maybe Ulta in store. As the consumer's been more conditioned, and as Amazon has really developed that program more around kind of brand gating and kind of create more of a brand building platform on Amazon, not just transactional, sponsored product ad. I think we're seeing more premium beauty brands shift to Amazon because the consumer is more conditioned and comfortable buying that product there. So I think if it's an undifferentiated product that's just at a low price point. I think that is going to continue to struggle. I think that might create consolidation or acquisition op in the next 1 to 2 years. If you've got the staying power of invested in the brand fundamentals and identity, I think those can, endure this time. But I think a lot of them are going to have to shift how they're appealing, to consumers, especially like with the Gen Z trends right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if there is a slowdown, because what do they say? Like, booze, gambling, and beauty tend to be fairly recession proof. But I just saw yesterday that I think Kohl's, the clothing retailer in the US, their stock price was down 30%, and they're looking at discounting some of their existing inventory up to 85% just to move it off their books, which to me just signals, Q2, Q3, probably a little bit of a purging and a tap out of the consumer and we'll see if that comes roaring back in Q4, which traditionally it does for Black Friday and the holiday season. But we finally might be seeing some things tapped out. And I think for any brands that are listening to this, you may be seeing something similar play out in your Amazon data, your direct to consumer data, your retail data. I think as you're planning, you should take that into account. Don't be over inventoried and really focus on forecasting to make sure you're set up for success heading through potentially some turbulent times. And we always know consumers tend to get uncertain during election years. This isn't meant to be political, but like every year that I've been in the consumer goods industry since I've graduated school, every time in election year, there's always weird patterns in consumer buying behavior. I think just probably the negativity of all the campaigns and, 50% of the country thinks the world's going to end, like depending on who's up, like people just start to become weird and more conservative with how they spend leading up to an election. And then once there's certainty, it tends to come back to normal. At least that's been the pattern for the past four or five election cycles I've been through in consumer goods.
Yeah. And before we transition to our last topic in some brand busting, I think we interrupt this program for some special announcements. First off, very big week for co-host here, Sean Lee, celebrating 9 years of marriage to his wife, Robin. So shout out Robin if you listen. And
I can assure you she does not listen. She hears my voice enough.
Well, you're getting a special shout out, Robin. And then also Sean was just named to the board of Dr. Knows Best. So I think Sean would love to, again, before I think just credit where credit's due. You've built up a great presence in the space and your 10 to 15 years of experience in CPG. So exciting time, and want to call that out for the listeners before we shift over.
Yeah, thanks. I'll add two things there. One, my wife says, I don't know why anybody would want to voluntarily listen to you talk on a podcast. So, that's what 9 years of marriage does to you, but I don't think she's listening, but thanks for all that are and do like to hear me talk. And then, excited to join the board of Dr. Knows Best. It's a really cool brand founded by an ENT out of Emory in University in Atlanta. And he basically was seeing all the problems of the kids that he treats. And one of them being like kids can't blow their nose, the products that are out there, like the nose free that are kind of gross, where you got to manually suck snot out. So he basically took a hospital grade, like snot sucker essentially, and created it into a consumer product that actually works. Like I've used it for all my kids. I've known them for quite some time. So really excited to join the board. I think this could be a baby product that should and will need to be on, every baby registry that's out there. I mean, just like your bottles or, your crib or your stroller, like this is a must-have product because it really helps the kids sleep better and helps the parents not have a kid with a runny nose that can't blow their nose and that's just fussy all the time. So really cool product. They're going to launch some more, and excited to help the team where I can. They've got a really great team in place, and that's my one plug. But hopefully we'll be able to have the founder on and do a little interview at some point.
Well, looking forward to it, and congrats again. Yeah,
thanks. Well, I think moving on, we've got our brand busting segment, which we haven't done in a few episodes, and this stemmed from a road trip that James took, and got him thinking about how a little gas station from Texas really became more than a gas station. It became almost like a destination. Like probably, I don't even know what I'd compare it to. It's probably like Cracker Barrel in its heyday, where you just had to go and you had to see it. So I'll turn it over to James to start brand busting the Buc-ee's brand.
Yeah. So depending where you reside in the country, you might have known about this budding gas station brand that is Buc-ee's. Actually founded in 1982, which is far older than I knew or would have thought. Founded in Texas by our chaplain, who is actually a construction scientist grad in Texas A&M. But like any overnight success, it wasn't until 2003 that the second location was built. And if you guys have never been to Buc-ee's, let me just set the stage. This is a massive footprint. This is not just like a gas station or a Pilot or a Sheetz. I love Sheetz. Sheetz is great. I mean, this is a massive 50,000 square foot, 100
Which is huge. Which is huge. Like for context, at our warehouse right now, which is 50,000 square feet. It's probably like two or three football fields side by side indoors. Like it's pretty wild.
So anyone in manufacturing has a warehouse, like it's on that scale. The original footprint was 3,000 square feet. And at that time, that was massive. And like, again, I think we always talk about like unicorns and overnight successes. Like this was a slow burn, 21 plus years from founding till the second location. You know, now that they're at 58 locations, you know, fast forward 42 years. But all this kind of came about to me, or my experience, with Buc-ee started last week. My younger brother is getting married in Hilton Head, and we're based in Cincinnati. So we did a road trip, brought my two sons, Adam and Roy, who are 5 and 3, making our way through Kentucky and into Tennessee. And all of a sudden we start seeing the billboards. Heard of Buc-ee's, never been to Buc-ee's. Well, all of a sudden now I'm getting my 5 and 3-year-old son like, Dad, what's that? What's the beaver? Like, we have to go. So whether that absolutely has to be intentional on Buc-ee's part. So shout out to their marketing team, their out of home advertising strategy. So we, I think just for the record, we hit Buc-ee's twice on this road trip. Once going down to Seviersville, Tennessee, and then once in Richmond, Kentucky on the way up, which was not planned, but over 147 mile stretch, 2-hour drive, there were 15 out of home billboard activations. Wow. So Adam and Rory, like every time they saw that, I was guilt tripped into stopping twice at a Buc-ee's, for this.
What was your experience like? I've never been to one. I need to go check one out, but was it as magical as kind of everybody describes?
You know, it is what it is, right? it's a gas station in its essence, but I think it's more of a special experience if you have kids, especially younger kids that like the allure of a fictional character, which they play up huge in the brand identity. A big retail space. So I think what they did well in this is I think there's a few themes that they really played on. So they played on the simple notions of convenience. So like no wait time at gas pumps with 100 plus options, broad range of kind of attractions and products. So you can get anything you want in there. Like full merchandise section, they have their own like in-house barbecue station, beef jerky bar, like fudge, bakery, bunch of brand material. So we talk about convenience and just access. Cleanliness, their tagline and initial advertising advertisements upon starting was like the cleanliest bathrooms, because as we know, when we're road tripping, last thing you want to do is to go to like a sketchy bathroom and just have a terrible experience, especially if you have young kids. And then creativity. So the beloved kind of beaver icon, the out-of-home advertising, the branded merch. I'm wearing a Buc-ee's hat right now. My kids got matching Buc-ee t-shirts and Buc-ee stuffed animals. And I think elevated food offerings, right? So it wasn't just like a McDonald's hamburger. You get smoked brisket that was done in-house. There's different things. Again, not knock your socks off barbecue, but it is an elevated dining experience. So like the convenience, cleanliness, and creativity that played on those three themes, and just does so at great scale. I think the other thing, Sean, they really openly advertise their compensation models outside. You're seeing store managers $150,000 to $200,000 earning potential for a retail convenience store. So I think the level of ownership I saw the employee base take, because they were fairly compensated, I think there was a certain pride that was beaming on them. So I think there's just like a certain energy. So they really did some great things at the foundational and fundamentals of the company, and then that translates to the consumer experience.
That's fantastic.
And from a number standpoint, annual sales per store are 12 to 25 million. I don't know what the profit margin is, but they really count the profitability. So they do great volume. They're an attraction, and I think again,
and they seem to be built in the outskirts where like real estate can't be that expensive. And I'm not sure, but I assume they probably own their locations too, which probably helps. But that's got to be a part of the model.
Well, and as we think about like how are brands trying to create, repeat purchase behavior and drive brand affinity, it's like, how can you create this unique experience? Because for me, I have no loyalty or affinity to any gas station. I'll stop wherever when I have to stop. But me on a road trip now, like I will go 15 or 20 minutes out of the way because I know I had a heightened experience with the kids and that they now like to go in there. So I think the lesson to be learned here and that they do, I was like, how can you, again, maybe a little bit harder through CPG, but like what can you do in your path to purchase or in your customer journey to create that affinity where people want to go out of their way to make that extra purchase or try you out or advocate for you. And I think they really embody that.
Yeah, I think you had me at cleanly bathrooms. Like, how many times have you walked into a bathroom and you're just like, man, there's been thousands of people just struggling in here, and this hasn't been cleaned in the past month. Like, you sold me on that. I would drive out of my way just to do that. I'm getting flashbacks to so many bad gas station bathrooms. But what I think is really interesting about it too is the fact that they took like a really boring and fragmented business model that nobody really thinks about and looked at how they could surprise and delight the consumer. And it may have taken them many, many years to get to where they are right now, but clearly they found a model that works. And I kind of liken it to, you see it in other categories too, right? Look at Yeti, where coolers were just kind of a boring thing that you bought and you put your drinks in, right? And then they created this community and this really cool high-end experience and charged a premium for it because they built the best cooler available and became known for that, and then branched into other products. I think, you take these boring categories, and if you really find what the consumer will want or create a delightful experience, you can set yourself apart from, something that, like you said, I do the same thing. You go to whatever gas station is closest or has the cheapest price. Like I couldn't even tell you the brand name of the gas station I go to. It's just whatever's on my way to work or on the road trip that has the cheapest price. Like maybe Pilot, I guess, is one that I've heard. But I remember when Buc-ee's opened in the greater Cincinnati area, that I remember getting news notifications. There were like media reports of it. I was like, I feel like they were covering this Buc-ee's store opening like they were covering when Taylor Swift came to town. Like it seems to be like they've built such great brand affinity and excitement that, like, I'm sure they weren't paying for that local press. It was just like, hey, this is a really cool thing we're getting because this is such a weird experience for a gas station. Like, you typically don't go into a 50,000 square footprint gas station and have this experience.
No, and the other thing here, which from a downline standpoint, we're now creating memories and nostalgia. So like, again, from a generational standpoint, like how do you create generational consumers? If your kids have a good experience of this type of thing, then they're going to want, when they're in a position where they're doing road trips, conceptually now they're going to be more inclined to go their way to continue that path. So again, I think not an overnight success. I mean, we're 40 plus years, 42 years after the fact. And I think they really nailed it probably within the last 10 to 15, where you saw a lot of the expansion take place. But that's how this works. But they've had the staying power. They figured out how to innovate, address the boring area, not to do anything overly innovative, but just focus on fundamentals and doing it very, very well. And, seeing that pay dividends today.
Yeah. I mean, I think two things that are really underrated in marketing that we've gotten away from as we become so hoity-toity and analytical are jingles. I think jingles are awesome. I was on Old Spice. We brought the jingle back. We made the jingle a focal point of everything. Like, the whistle was huge and memorable. More brands should use jingles. And I also think the character, like a Mickey Mouse character, the Buc-ee's character, are completely underutilized. Like, how memorable is it to see that logo and you immediately know it's Buc-ee's? Or think of the Starbucks mermaid, right? Like, they don't even have to put Starbucks on their stores anymore. They just have the mermaid. More brands should think about not just having like a clean, cool, typeface logo, but think about like what other ways can you be memorable, whether it's a cool, mascot, a catchy jingle. I think as marketers, we think that's too lowbrow and it's not the cool high-end premium thing to do, but so many brands have built amazing memorability on the backs of these cool characters or these really cool and memorable jingles.
Completely agree.
All right. With that, I think that probably concludes our episode today. So we'll keep coming at you every couple weeks with a brand new episode, and we'll probably start having some guests on here soon. So if you're interested, you can always write to me and James on social media. Go to the BrandBustersPodcast.com, send us an email, let us know who you'd like to have on or what kind of conversations you'd like us to have. I think on Spotify you can drop in the show notes or the Q&A at the end any suggestions. So if you want to hear about a topic that's really really burning you want to hear about, or a person that you want us to talk to, go there and drop it. We do see all your feedback. We appreciate all the listeners. Shout out to the Dr. Knows Best team. I know the founder's probably listening. He doesn't follow my wife's advice, and he listens to me talk. I don't know why. But yeah, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.